So last week we have created a Docker Swarm cluster. As of now, this is how our cluster is. We have a Docker Swarm master 1, master 2, and master 3. So we have as of now 3 masters and we have master 3. And we created, as of now we have only 2 workers. This is our cluster. Docker worker or node, worker node or slave. We call it as Docker. This is master node. This is our Docker Swarm cluster as of now. All these servers makes a cluster. This is part of one cluster. This is part of one cluster. So this is one cluster as of now. So we have like in kind of automate is if it is an automation, in case of automation, the developer will commit the code into GitHub and the CI/CD server pulls the code. CI/CD server like Jenkins will build the code here. It will clone, it will build. If we have a Sonar cube, you can run Sonar. Finally, you can build an image. You can push an image. And finally, you can connect to master, right? You can connect to master machine, any one of the master machine. You can create a service. We are creating a service. Docker service create. If you want to access outside, you need to give a port binding, service name -p, again host port and container port, your image name, and if you have environment variables, all those things. Now this guy or this masters will try to create a replicas for that service based on the availability. Suppose this machine is having some resources. This machine is having some resources, some CPU memory available. So this master machine will maintain the information about that service, right? So if you remember, there will be a folder called swamp folder, right? In this, that swamp folder contains all your services information. So how many services are there? Where the replica is created in this machine or this machine? Replica 1 or basically container 1 for that service. If you scale, maybe container can come here. If you don't disable the container schedule in masters, containers can come here also. And these masters will be in sync always. These masters will be in sync always. So the leader and the other masters will be in sync. So it will have the latest state of this cluster. How many services are there? How many replicas are there for each service? In which node it is running? All that information will be there. Suppose if one of the replica goes down, it will try to reschedule. If I scale based on the availability, it will increase the number of containers. If I scale, it will increase the number of containers for that service. And even though these replicas are not running in this machine or this machine, we can access using this IP, this IP, this IP, because all are part of same group. And this guy will communicate with this guy will communicate with this guy. There is a intercommunication. So we have to create a service. How many types of services are there in Docker Swarm, as we discussed last week? How many types of services are there? There are two types of services. What is those? Replica and global. So this is what we have done. Docker service create hyphen name. You can give some service name. Sorry, some service name. Port binding or and image name. Under which service, under which mode this service will be created? If I create something like this, the default one is replica. The default one is replica with one replica. Suppose if I want to, while creating a service itself, if I want to create more, while creating a service itself, if I want to create more, I can use some option like this, hyphen replicas number of replicas. How many you want to create? So after creating a service, if I want to scale up and scale down, will I able to scale up and scale down? Suppose I created a service with just one replica. For high availability in my application, for high availability in my application, if I want to scale my number of replicas, if I want to scale the containers for that service, how can I scale? Can we scale? Something like this. I created only two replicas for that service. I want to create a third replica. So how can we scale up? How can we scale up? Suppose I just have two replicas for this service. Let's assume this is for one image. This is one service. I have just two replicas. How can we scale up? I have to inform to master to scale this service from two replicas to three replicas. So I already have two replicas. How can we scale up? We have to execute this Docker service scale your service name, whatever service you want to scale, equals to something like this. So instead of how many replicas you have, like it will try to scale three replicas. If I want to scale down, if I want to scale down, I have to execute something like this, or to scale up, scale down. So this is what we have done last week. So I have a master, 3-node master. Let me connect to the primary one, or any master. So this is my cluster. This is leader. This node is leader. And these two are reachable. Reachable in the sense secondary managers. And this is workers. So I created a service, one service in a replica mode, two replicas. Where these replicas are running, try to understand difference between Docker PS and Docker service PS. Docker service PS, my service name. This is my service name. When I execute Docker PS, what it will display? Is it a cluster wide? Is it listing the cluster wide containers? Or is it listing only the containers which are running in that one, in that machine? Node level. Now I want to see service level. I want to see service level. I want to see service level. So Docker service PS service name. This service is having a multiple replicas. So here one replica is there, here one replica is there. So there are two replicas. There are two replicas. When I access this application using any port, any IP, which is part of that cluster, think application context may depends on your var file, what you have copied, what with what name you have copied sometimes. So this is my application context. Even though it is not running in these servers, let me take this server, some of the server. So it is running in 190, 190 is this one, and 143, this one. Even though it is not running in this machine or this machine, right? We will be able to access using these machines also, 161. In this node, it is not running. If I go here, 8080 slash maven web app, I am able to access. So request is going to this server, even though it is not running here. Let me take, when I access, request is going to this IP, on port 8080. On port 8080. Even though the container is not running, this is part of this cluster. This guy is redirecting internally. This guy is redirecting internally to the container, one of the container. Suppose this will act as a load balancer internally for a healthy container, for this one or maybe this one, another replica. This one and this one, right? If you see, this is working. Now intentionally let me terminate one container. Intentionally let me, this replica is running in the master itself. So if I terminate this, I executed docker ps in this node. If I terminate this, I am intentionally stopping. Do you see our application is down? Is it down? So request is going to which replica? Request is going to which replica? How many replicas we have? Request is going to this replica 2. The replica 2. But in the background, what Docker Swarm has done? Is it just having only one container, or again is it recreated the other container? In the background, what happened? I intentionally terminated this container. Now in the background, what this has done? This, if you see this error, I intentionally stopped this, where it has replicated again in the same node. It has created a new one. Suppose Let me create a one more replica, one more service, Docker service create hyphen name, another application. I have another application, port mapping. I already have one service on 8080. Will I able to use again the service host port 8080 service? This host port, will I able to use again one more service for 8080? No. So you can have maybe different port, whatever is available. Now this image. Guys, since I am not giving the tag like this 1, 2, 3, which one it will take, guys? I see some people are saying, sir, I have an image in the repository, but I'm not able to create a container. If I don't mention the tag name here, what tag it will use? What version? It will use something like this, latest. If I don't have a image created with this name, with this tag, if I don't have an image created with this tag, and if it is not there in the repository, will it work? Right? Make sure if you get that error, image not found or no manifest, try to check what version you are giving and whether if it is there in the repository or not. Okay. So just let me give something like this. And while creating a service itself, I can mention the replicas, how many replicas I need. Hyphen replicas as maybe, let's say 3. I have not given that, there is a error. In between, I have given this option. Hyphen replicas. Let me give 3. Now, Docker service ls. How many services I have in this cluster? How many services I have in this cluster as of now? Services. That is what we are trying to understand. Services. How many services? How come 3 services? Service is different. Containers are different. Don't get confused with service, containers, clusters. This is very important. In this cluster, how many services we have? This is one service. This is one service. How many services we have? 2 services. So how many replicas for this service? How many replicas for this service? I mean to say, how many containers for this service? 3. Replicas are nothing but what? Containers. So now how many containers I have in this cluster? How many containers I have in this cluster? 5, right? So don't get confused with cluster, service, stack. So I will come to that. What is stack? So this is one service, this is one service, one application. If I want to access this one from outside, I can access this one. Suppose this service want to communicate with this service. This is one application. Internally, this application has to communicate with this service. Will they able to communicate with each other using service name and this port, service name and your container port? Will they able to communicate with each other? Why? If this container has to communicate, if this service has to communicate with this service, will they able to communicate with each other on a service using service name and this port? Why it is not possible? It is possible because both are running in, both services are created in which default network now? This service and this service is running in a overlay network. So they can communicate with each other. They can communicate with each other. Maybe let me show you. If I go into one of the container, Docker exec -it. Let me go inside this container ID bash. Now let me try to access ping if curl is not there. Unknown host. It will be able to communicate. For some reason I am getting this error. I will show you another example. We have a database container and we have a front-end container. If they are running in a same network, this guy will be able to communicate with this guy. So it will be able to communicate with each other. I will show that. Because this is also in same network, this is also in same network. If you inspect the service, Docker service ls Docker service inspect this service. So the network, right? It is running in the default ingress. Other one also running in a default ingress. So both are running in a same network. Same network. So on this port, on ingress network, they are running with each other. Okay. So if you don't have a packages, you need to update the required softwares to connect. So since they are running in same network, they can communicate with each other using service name also. I'll show that in another example practically. Now this is replica mode. This is replica mode. We can scale, but what type of scaling Docker Swarm supports? Will I able to scale automatically based on the load on my application or my containers? Does Docker Swarm support auto scaling of our replicas? Or what type of scaling we are doing, guys, as of now? What type of scaling we are doing? Manual scaling. Docker Swarm doesn't support. Docker Swarm doesn't support auto scaling. What is meaning of auto scaling? If there is a lot of load, lot of people are accessing this application. Lot of people are accessing this application. And you have less number of replicas, less number of containers. There will be a load. on the containers, on the application. Automatically, I should be able to scale, but Docker Swarm doesn't support auto scaling. We have to manually scale by executing these commands. So this is one kind of a service replica. What is global mode? If I create a service in global mode, what will happen? What is global mode? If I create a service in global mode, what will happen? If we create service in global mode, if I create a service in global mode, if we create a service in global mode, service will have a copy of container in each and every active nodes, or for global services I can say other way around. For global services, each and every active node will have a one container for that service. For global services, each and every active node will have a one container. It will create container in each and every node. So if I create some service, if I create some service in a global mode, each and every active node will have a copy of container. So I'll come to that. What is the meaning of active node? Now, how many nodes are active? If you see availability, how many nodes are active for now? 5. So what is the meaning of active, right? So if the node is active, it is ready to have a containers. It is ready to take a containers. Now why my master machines also having a containers for these services, whatever services I am creating? Why master machines also having a containers? That is because my master machine is active to take a containers. So what is this status ready? So my machine is ready. My machine is ready. I don't have any issues with machine. And my machine is active, marked as active. So it is ready to take containers. So that's why in the master also we are getting a container. So I will come to that. How can I disable that? Now if I create a service in a global mode, let me create a one service, Docker service, create hyphen name, some image guys. I am taking Nginx image. Just to deploy something, I am taking Nginx image. So this is image name, just one image I am trying to deploy. In which mode it will deploy? Since I have not given the mode, if I execute something like this, in which mode it will deploy? Replica. So I want to create this service in a global mode, hyphen mode global, hyphen mode global. If you see why it is preparing 5 tasks, I mean to say 5 replicas, why not 2, why not 1, why not 3? Because I am creating a service in global mode. If you see this service, in which mode it is running? This is the service name I have given, global mode. Global mode. Why it is 5 by 5? Because there are 5 machines in this cluster. All machines are active to take a containers. 5 machines are active, right? The containers. Now, will I able to scale up, scale down these global services? Will I able to scale up, scale down these global services? Can I scale up, scale down the way I have scaled up? Am I able to scale up? Am I able to scale down these global services? Do you see? Am I able to scale down? Am I able to scale up these global services? Am I able to scale down from 5 to 4? Am I able to scale down from 5 to 6? Here, what it is saying? Scale can be used only with replica mode. Scale can be used only with replica mode. We cannot scale up, we cannot scale down replica global mode. Only replica modes we can scale up, scale down. Suppose if I add a one more machine to this cluster, what will happen to global services, guys? I created a service, global service. Suppose I will add a one more machine to this cluster. What will happen to global services? What Docker Swarm will do in case of global service, if you have a global service? If I add a one more machine, I already have some global services. If I add a one more machine, what will happen to global services? In that newly added machine, will it create a replica for global services automatically? Suppose if I add another node, it will add. I no need to do anything. If you add one more machine to this cluster, automatically the replica will be created for your global services. That is the meaning of global. That is the meaning of global, right? Whether you add any new machine, automatically it will create a replica in that one. Now, if one of the worker went down, if one of the worker went down, I have a global service. How many replicas it will have if suppose one of the node went down? If one of the node went down, will it replicate or it will just have 4 by 4? If one of the node went down, will it have a 4 by 4 or 5 by 5 in case of global? 4 by 4. That is because global. Each and every node will have a one copy of your container. Suppose if one node went down, two nodes went down, but for replicas, what it will try to maintain? For replicas, what it will try to maintain for a replica mode? It will try to maintain expected and actual, right? So that is the difference between global mode and replica mode. In real time, our applications, our own applications, in which mode we will deploy, what mode we will use. Our applications will be deployed in a replica mode so that we can scale up, scale down. Very important also, guys, interview question, like what kind of applications you will deploy in a global mode, like what kind of softwares or applications you will deploy in a global mode. Why you need web servers in a global mode, right? You don't need web servers in a global mode also, right? Like the monitoring softwares, suppose you want to monitor all your servers, your cluster, like a monitoring agents. Suppose you want to aggregate all your logs and you want to send all your logs to some central application, central server, log aggregation, monitoring softwares, monitoring agents. So each and every node should have some agent, monitoring agent. Suppose you want to monitor that server, some kind of a monitoring agent, some kind of a security tool, some softwares which should be part of all your nodes. So in which node you can deploy if you are using Docker Swarm? In which mode you can deploy if you are using Docker Swarm? Suppose all your servers should have that software running in a global mode. We cannot scale up, scale down the global services. Now, again, how many services I have in this cluster? Why I am keep on asking this? How many services I have in this cluster? This is also a service, global mode. How many services I have? 3. And how many containers I have? 5 plus 2 plus 3. Why I am asking this question? For one of our student in the interview, they asked these questions. How many clusters you have? Docker, Swarm or Kubernetes, whatever you have mentioned in the resume. How many services you have? She mentioned she was, she used Docker and Docker Swarm. They asked this question. How many containers you have? She got confused with cluster containers. Since I told, when I am explaining the class, I told we are having 700 plus containers in my project. What she told? How many clusters you have? She got confused with clusters and containers. She told 700. That is the five, she has cleared 2 rounds. Manager has, manager took the third round. The manager asked this question, the final round. How many clusters you have? She has cleared already 2 rounds. She was very good. She practiced, very well. She was able to clear the 2 rounds, and in the final round, this is the question she got. How many clusters you have? She got confused with containers and clusters. She told 700. That is the last question, right? The manager had asked. Okay, manager told, okay, really you have a 700 clusters? She said confidently, yes. So that was the last question. Some small mistakes also will cause the problem. So you should be very clear what is cluster, what is services, what is containers. So I am saying I have a 700 plus containers. Does it mean I have a 700 services? Does it mean I have a 700 services in my production in the Docker Swarm? No. Service is what? Service is nothing but one application. One application. Service is collection of what I told guys? Collection of containers or replicas of same type image or basically application. Same type in the sense some application, one microservice. So my project, I am working for multiple projects in the same client. I have a project A. I don't want to give a names for a project. For this project, I have 20 microservices. I have another project B. For this project, I have somewhere around 15 microservices. We are deploying multiple projects in the same cluster. So 20 microservices. Like we have like, right, user, user service or user profile, something like this. Accounts, right? Claims. This is one microservice. This is one image. Something like this. This image, we are having like 8 replicas. We are having like 8 replicas. Like few we have like something like this. We have 6 replicas. Based on the load, we have more number of replicas. This microservice will be accessed by lot of applications, basically lot of people. Like we have a claims, like for claims we are getting less request, so we are having some less replicas, something like this. So based on the requirement, based on the load on the application, we will have a replicas. Now on and average for this one, we have almost 200 replicas, 200 containers. For this one, on and average, we have 100 plus containers. So we are supporting multiple projects. Multiple projects in the same cluster. So multiple microservices. Each microservice is a image that we are running as a cluster. So don't get confused with containers, services. If they ask services, you might like you can answer like I have a 15 microservices for that application or 20 microservices for that application, right? Not like one project, one module. In microservice architecture, what I told, we discussed what is monolithic and microservice. In monolithic, one project is basically one package. But in case of microservices, I am saying project A, that project A is again developed as a small multiple microservices. Future. One microservice is like one feature or one module. One microservice is like one feature or one module. Within this project, you have a multiple microservices. We discussed what is monolithic, what is microservice. So, if you are not clear about the question, in the interview, try to again ask the question, right? I didn't get your question. Can you please repeat? Don't answer in a hurry. Okay. Understand the question properly, then you give the answer. Okay. And don't be overconfident. Okay. Understand the question properly, then give an answer. Like these kind of small mistakes also will cause the issue, right? So now let's come back. We have a services, global service and replica service. Now I don't want containers to be created in a master machines. I don't want my replicas to run in a master. I don't want the replicas to be created in a master. I don't want my replicas, my containers to be created in a master. There are two options, guys. There are two options. One is I can drain this node. I can drain these nodes. What is the availability status as of now for my masters? What is the availability status for my masters as of now? Active. So I can drain the node. What is the meaning of drain, right? It is part of cluster. It is part of cluster, but we are saying we are marking that node as a drain so that the containers will not be created in that node. If I drain the if I drain the node, any node, whether it is a master or worker, I can drain the node. If I drain the node, what will happen? The containers will not be scheduled. The containers will not be scheduled in that node. What will happen to the already running containers in that node? Suppose if I drain this node, what will happen to the containers in that node if there are already some containers are running, especially for replica mode services? If there are some service, containers are running in this node, if I drain this node, what will happen to those containers? What will happen to those containers, guys? It will move to the another active nodes. The containers will be moved to the active nodes, another active nodes. So I can drain. For replica, it will replicate in another node. For global, what will happen? It will not replicate because that is a global mode, right? It will just terminate the container for a global node in that machine, global service in that machine. The global service also will not run in that node. If I make it drain, I can drain any node. I can drain worker node also. That is one option. That is one option. If you see, Docker service ls Docker service ps. This one 161. What is 161? One worker. 93 and 213. So 93 and 213. 93 and 213. These are masters. If I drain these nodes, what will happen to these replicas? If I drain this one and if I drain this 213 and 161, not 161, this 93. This one and if I drain, what will happen to these replicas? Already it is running, it will move to another nodes. It will move to another nodes. Let me see the other one. $90 and 43. What is 43? This one. And 90 is this one. So this one also will be moved to another. Now how I can drain the nodes, any node. How can I drain the node? Docker node update hyphen availability. Docker node update hyphen availability drain. What I need to give? I need to give a node ID or node name. Let me drain this one 190. Docker node update hyphen availability drain. I can give this one, this name or this ID. Now let me see this drain. Does it mean my master is not doing its job? I drain this node. Does it mean is it not orchestrating? Is it not managing your machines or containers? I have drained the node. Does it mean it is not doing the manager job now? It's doing the manager job. But what we have done? We have made this node as a drain so that the containers will not be scheduled in this node. Now if you see Docker service ls, this replica still it is 3 by 3, but global why it is 4 by 4? Earlier it was 5 by 5. For global why it is 4 by 4 still? Why it is 4 by 4? Because we drain one of the node. Now if I see that global, that replica service, why this replica is moved to this server now 213? Why it got terminated, shut down about minute ago? Why this replica is now is running in this node? Why it is not running in this node now? Because we drain the master node. We drain the master node. We drain the master node. So now I am draining the masters. I am draining the masters. If I want to drain this one also, I can drain. If I want to drain another master also, I don't want containers to be come in that one. I can drain the masters. 213 also I have drained. 93 also I have drained. Now Docker node ls. My masters are marked as a drain. So now will I get a containers in these machines, guys? Masters? Any container, whatever I am going to create. Whether it's a global or replica, will I get? No. This is one option. And there is another option. If you don't want to drain, you can again make it active, guys. How can I make active? This is one option. Again, I can make it active. Something like this. Suppose, guys, sometimes you are getting these kind of questions. Suppose I have a Docker Swarm cluster. I have some machines. I want to do some patches in one of the workers. Like one of the machine, I want to do some kind of a patch activity. I want to update that software. Some of the software I need to update, or I want to do some OS patches. How can I do this without impacting my applications, without impacting my cluster? You got my question, guys? I have some machines in the Docker Swarm cluster. I want to do some kind of a OS patches without impacting my application, without impacting my cluster. How can I do that? I want to update some OS, or I want to update some some software in that machine. What approach I can follow without impacting? Can I drain that node so that containers will be moved to another node if you have enough number of nodes? Can I drain the node so that the whatever containers are running will be moved to another node? Then can I do some whatever patches I want to do in that server? Once I drain the node, can I do the patches? Whatever I want to do. Once my activity is done, can I again make it active so that my cluster will not be overloaded? So this is also sometimes you are getting these kind of a questions. So I can make it active. I will show other option, like even though my machines are active, I can still control the placement. So let me make active. I will make it active for all, like let me make it active. Now all machines are active. Now if you see services, why again this is 5 by 5? This global, why again it is 5 by 5? Because again these machines are active. So global mode will work something like this. Now so since it is already moved, it is not moved back to again original server, because replicas you need just 3 replicas. Where it run, that doesn't matter. Where it run, that doesn't matter. We have 3 replicas. For this one we have 2 replicas. Now there is another way. Let me delete these services because I have very less less servers, guys. I cannot create more services because we are having just 1 GB servers. Let me remove services. How can I remove services, guys? If I delete containers, it will keep creating. How can I delete service? Docker service rm your service name. Let me delete these services. I will delete all the services for now. Now we don't have any services in this cluster. So now, even though my nodes are active, even though my nodes are active, even though my nodes are active, now I can control the containers using a concept called labels and constraints. Labels and constraints. Constraint is nothing but a condition. So I can control the placement, container placement. I can call it as a container placement. So I can control the placement of my containers using this concept, labels and constraints. Labels and constraints. So for now, first let me show that. Let me inspect this node, Docker inspect. Let me inspect this one. As of now, we don't have a labels. I'll come to that. What is the role for this node? whatever node I am inspecting, what is the role for this node? If you see, what is the role for these nodes? What is the role of these machines? Manager. So running nodes I will share, Martin. I will share the running nodes where I have comments, where how to drain, how to make it active. There, I will share in the running nodes. So the role of the role is basically for this one is manager. If I inspect this guy also, if I inspect this guy also, it will be manager only. Manager. So if I inspect these guys, what will be the role? I am just showing the details. So for this node, what is the role? For these nodes, role is worker. For this node, role is worker. For this node also role is worker. So now I can control the placement of containers. I can control the placement of containers using this one also. So while creating a service, whether it's a global mode or replica mode, if I have something like this, hyphen replicas, hyphen constraint node dot role double equals to worker containers. For this service, where the containers will be created if I use something like this? Service is basically managed by the Docker Swarm manager. Service will be managed by managers only, but containers will be created. Manager will create a containers where for this service. If I use something like this, only in the workers. Only in the workers. Suppose if you want to create a global service, if you don't give this global service, so will it create containers in the masters also? Global service, if I don't mention any constraint or condition for this service, yes, right? You can control using this concept constraint. So let me show that. As of now, I deleted all the services. Let me create a service. Docker service create hyphen name some application hyphen replicas 3. -p -constraint. What is my constraint, my condition? Node dot role double equals to worker. Container placement or container scheduling. My image name. My image name Docker hands-on Java hyphen web hyphen app. Now I have 3 replicas for this service. All the nodes are active. If you see why it is scheduled, why Docker Swarm is scheduled, the manager has scheduled the containers only in this node, only in 161 and 43. There are 2 replicas in this machine. Why it is not scheduled in this one? 190, 43, 213, even though it is active. That is because of the condition, the constraint which we used while creating a service. Something like this. Now if I scale up, scale down, where it will happen, guys? If I scale up, will it, for this service, if I scale this service, Docker service scale, now where it will happen, will I get a containers in the masters? Whatever you do, only in the workers, because that is my condition. That is my condition. That is my condition. If I scale up also, it will scale only wherever you have a node, role is worker. If you see in this only, it is scaling. Suppose if I have another worker, as of now I have only 2 workers. Suppose if I have another worker, so the scaling would have happened in that worker. So this is how you can control the placement. Now in the interview they are asking some questions, something like this. I have 3 workers or some workers. I have some workers. I have some workers. Suppose I have another worker. Now my requirement is I want the service container should be created in this node. I have total 3 workers. My requirement is this is suppose this node is having a special hardware. Suppose you are using this machine has a like the special hardware. Suppose you have provisioned IOPS EBS attached, right? You will get a better read and write special kind of a hardware you have. Now I want some container. Suppose I am trying to schedule a database container. Now this machine has a special hardware requirement for my database. I need better read and write capabilities. I have a special hardware in this node. Whenever I create a database containers or some container, I want container to be created in this node only. You have some kind of a requirement. I want containers to be created in this node only. The service has to create a replicas in this node or group of nodes. You have some special kind of a hardware requirement. You have some node, something like this. Now I want containers to be created in specific node when I create a service. How can I do that? Can I use this? Can I use this role? Can I use this role? Can I have a constraint based on the role? Is it possible? Can I have a constraint based on the role? If I use constraint as a role, this machine also having a role as worker. This machine also having a role as worker. Can I use role based condition, role based constraint? If you have a special kind of a requirement, like you have, you should get a containers only in this node or group of these nodes. So what can we do? We can add a labels. There is a concept. We can add a labels. As of now, do we have any labels for these nodes? If you inspect, Docker node inspect or Docker inspect, Docker inspect or Docker node inspect. If you inspect, do you have any labels? As of now, do you see any labels has been added so far? We have only role. For any node, do we have a labels? Did we added any labels for the nodes? So we don't have any labels. So can I add a label and can I use that label as my constraint? Can I add a label something like this? Label is key value pair. Can I add something like this? Like type, like can I mark these things as something type EBS base, EBS storage, something like this. Some key value pair. You can give ABC colon XYZ. You can give ABC colon XYZ, some meaningful name. So you have a special kind of a requirement. You can have a labels, something like this. Type DB servers. You can add same label for multiple machines, something like this. And for these machines, maybe you can label something else. Type, I'm just giving, example, app servers, something like this. Can I add a label, something like this? For a machine or group of machines? Can I add a labels, something like this? But Prasanna is asking, you are labeling the nodes. You are labeling the nodes. Does it mean you are going to use same cluster for int production? Think practically. I am labeling the nodes. Can I use same node for a production, like same cluster? I mean to say, can I use same cluster for production dev? You have a different cluster. Here I am labeling the nodes so that I can schedule my containers based on my specific requirement. I can label you as some name, right? Prasanna. I can label you as with some key and value, right? We are labeling the nodes. We are not labeling the services. We are labeling the nodes. While creating a service, I am using that as a condition, constraint, so that the containers will be created for that service only in that machines. So now I can label something like this. I can give n number of labels. I can give whatever I want to give. I can give another label also. So we are using this concept, guys, in my project also. As I told, we have total 10 workers, right? Out of 10 workers, 7 workers, we have a special hardware. Like 3 workers, we have a special different hardware. 3 workers, we labeled as DB servers. 7 workers, we labeled as app servers. 7 workers, we labeled as app servers. Our database is also running as a containers. For database, we have a special kind of a hardware. So those workers we labeled as a DB servers. Whenever we are deploying database containers, we are using this as a condition. So if I use this as a condition, constraint, what will happen? While scheduling a database containers, if I use this as a constraint, what will happen? Where my database containers will be scheduled? Will it come in these machines or in these machines? Only wherever your condition is satisfied. So we can add a label based on, right? You can add a label. So how to add a label? I have a nodes. I have a nodes. How can I add a label? Docker node update hyphen label hyphen add key and value. Key and value. I can say something like this. Just to give an example, I am saying type or name. You can give ABC, XYZ, whatever you want to give, right? I can say name or type. You can give anything. Let me give something like this. Let me label this guy something like this. You can use node ID or name while labeling. Docker node update hyphen label hyphen add key and value. You can give any key, any value. Now let me inspect this node. Now can I see that label? Whatever I have added. Now can I use this label as a condition, guys? Can I use this label as a condition while creating a some service? Docker service ls. Let me maybe create another service. Maybe let me delete this one itself. Docker service rm. Now, while creating a service, what is my condition? What can I use? Now, instead of node.role, what can I say, guys? Instead of node.role, what can I say? Node.labels, labels dot. What is my label key? What is the key? Label key I have given type. Label key is type. What value? Whatever value you want to match, right? App server. Now, even though I am creating 3 replicas, where it will create, guys? All the 3 replicas will be created in where? Wherever, whatever node has a label as this. Suppose if I have 2 servers with same label, what will happen? If I have a 2 servers with this label, these replicas will be scheduled in only those nodes. Only those nodes. As of now, I have only one node with this label. As of now, I have only one node with this label. It will be all the replicas are scheduled in the same node. Docker service, Docker service PS, service name. Why all are running in same node? Why all are running in same node for this service? Why all are running in the same node for this service? Because while creating a service, Docker service inspect. Let me inspect this service. Placements. Placements. What is my constraint, guys? While creating a service, while creating this service, I created a service placement, container placements. Right? What is my condition? This is my condition. So whatever node has satisfied that condition, it will be scheduled. Suppose, let me delete this service once again. Suppose if I give something like this, guys. I don't have any label, I don't have any node with this label. What will happen? App servers, or maybe like I don't have any node with this label. What will happen? Does your Docker Swarm will be able to schedule the containers? None of the node has satisfied this condition. None of the nodes satisfied this condition. What is the problem? What it is saying? No suitable node. Scheduling constraint not satisfied on any node. So this is how you can control the placement of your containers. So sometimes you will use these kind of things also in your project. We are using this one. So Sharavanan, you got your answer, right? You are asking, I think, same question. I didn't saw your question properly. I think you are asking the same question, like, can we create a containers on a specific node? Okay. So this is how you can do that. So these containers will be again orchestrated or managed by your masters. This masters, right? Suppose, let me give correct thing. App server. Now containers are scheduled in that node. What if that node went down? Will it able to reschedule to any other node, guys, in this scenario? As per my current labels, suppose if this node went down, 143 went down for some reason, maybe Docker process is down, this 43 server, Docker process is down, or maybe server is down. Now, the master, will it able to reschedule to another node for this service? Suppose for some reason your Docker process is down. I'm not shutdowning my machine. For some reason, this process is down. So for Docker is running now, Docker service. Now I am trying to stop. Now, will it able to reschedule guys to another node? Now, Docker node ls, Docker node ls. Now, status. If you see, this is down. Why it is down? Master machine is not able to reach that machine on a Docker service is down. The Docker port is not up and running. Docker service is down. Docker daemon is down. Now, is our application, is this service? I have a one service. Now, if you see, is it, why it is pending? This is down. Why it is pending? Why it is pending? This node is down. Why it is not able to reschedule to another node? Why it is in pending state? Do we have any another node which satisfies that condition, that constraint as of now? Do we have any another node which satisfies the condition, that constraint? So that's why it is in pending state. So this is how you can use placements, constraints, labels and constraints for a container placement. So let me start this back. Let me start this service. Let me start that server. Now, what is the current status? Since there is the Docker is back, the Docker server is back. That server has a label. Now the condition is satisfied and also the node is up and running. Now do you see your application again back? Your replicas are running back. So this is how you can use labels and constraints, guys. This is how you can use labels and constraints. Now, manager high availability. Now what is my active manager? What is the leader now? Docker node ls. Which machine is leader? 190. Suppose if this node went down, the master node went down. Since I have a 3 masters, do I have a high availability in the masters? Suppose if this node went down, out of these 2 servers, one master will become a leader and then it will manage the cluster. Suppose if I have only one, or if I have only 2 leaders, two masters, will I get a high availability in the masters? No. If you stop one of the server, this leader 190, 190, this one, this is the leader now, right? If I stop this, I no need to stop the server. If I just make the service down, sudo service docker stop. Now Docker is completely stopped. My Docker commands will not work here. Now, out of this one, now maybe this one or this one might have become a leader. This one and this one might have become a leader. Now let me start the service and check. Let me again bring back my Docker. But by this time, it will take. Which one become a leader, guys? Earlier this was leader, 190. This was leader. Since it went down, which one became a leader now? Who is managing the cluster now? Now which node is managing the cluster? Earlier this was leader. Now which is managing the cluster? Who became a leader? This guy. So how can we have a high availability in the masters? This is also one question. By having a odd numbers of managers. Like they may ask one question like, right? Docker Swarm manager quorum. By having a odd numbers of managers, we will have a quorum of masters. I explained the formula also, n minus 1 by 2. That should be always greater than 1. So those many numbers, those many managers will be available. So this is how it will work. So again, suppose I have one application that has multiple microservices. How can I deploy multiple services in a Docker Swarm cluster? Do I need to execute Docker service create multiple times? Or is there a way we can deploy multiple services in Docker Swarm? So the star is basically the one which we have initiated the cluster, but now this is not the leader. What is the status? What is the status? Reachable. This is star because this is where we initialize the cluster, but this is the leader now. So how can I deploy multiple services? If I have to deploy multiple services for my application, do I need to execute Docker service create multiple times in my Docker Swarm? Or is there a way I can deploy multiple services into Docker Swarm? I have to deploy multiple services. How can we deploy multiple services in Docker Swarm cluster? That we will continue tomorrow, guys. How can we deploy? Using Docker Compose. There is a concept called a Docker stack. Using Docker Compose, we can create a stack. So tomorrow we will continue on Docker Swarm also. Tomorrow will be the last class of Docker, right? From day after tomorrow, we will start Kubernetes. We'll continue tomorrow, guys. Again, in real time, how many clusters we have? I think last week I discussed. Last week I explained, right? When I created a Docker Swarm cluster. Did you attended the day before yesterday class? I mean to say the last class. So how many clusters, if you have attended, I explain how many clusters you have. Can someone answer like how many clusters? For each environment depends on the number of environments you have. Suppose you have a dev QA production. How many clusters? Suppose you have a dev environment, you have a QA environment, you have a prod environment. How many clusters? 3 clusters. Each cluster will have its own managers, its workers. So that is depends on number of environments you used. Okay. So tomorrow we'll continue, guys, on the Docker stack. What is Docker stack? We'll continue tomorrow. Guys, any progress on the assignments except Praveen? I didn't got a response from the for the assignment whatever I have given. I appreciate Praveen. You are like spending some effort to complete the assignment so that you are able to understand the concepts. What about others, guys? I have given one assignment. You have 2 days time. Try to complete the assignments so that you can understand the concept. If you don't complete the assignment, maybe you cannot remember. You can remember for some time these concepts, but you cannot remember for long time. Try to complete the assignment so that you are going to do the required task you are performing. That is what we will do in the real time also. If you have given a task, you have to execute that task. You have to perform that task, right? So while doing that, you will come to know like what is what, why we are doing this, right? So try to finish the assignments. We'll continue tomorrow. From day after tomorrow, we will start Kubernetes. Okay. Thank you guys. I'm stopping the session for today. We'll continue tomorrow.